In this video, we're going to be looking at writing linear functions from word problems, in particular when there are negative numbers for the slope or the initial value. Noah drove from the Dead Sea up to Jerusalem. When she arrived in Jerusalem after 1.5 hours of driving, her altitude was 710 meters above sea level. Her altitude increased at a constant rate of 740 meters per hour. Let y represent Noah's altitude in meters relative to sea level after x hours, and complete the equation for the relationship between the altitude and the number of hours. So some information was given, and I like to organize the information between two variables in a table, where x is the number of hours that Noah's been driving and y is her altitude in meters. So we know that she started, it says, at the Dead Sea, right? And she was heading up to Jerusalem. So zero hours into this, she was at some altitude. Now we don't know what altitude, so I'm just going to leave this part of the table blank. But we do know that after 1.5 hours, her altitude was 710 meters above sea level, so that's a positive 710. So this is the information I know from the problem. I'm also given that she is traveling at a constant rate, so I know this is a linear function. And so my form of the function I think that we're going to try to use is y equals mx plus b, where m is your rate of change that is given to us in the problem. B, the initial value, is not given in the problem, but we can figure it out. So, what is the rate of change that Noah is driving at every hour? It says a constant rate of 740 meters per hour. Okay, so here's my equation. I need to know my initial value, right, my y-intercept. And so we are going to use the information that's given for rate of change, that change in y over change in x is equal to 740 over 1. So my change in x here is going to be 1, which helps me fill out that blank spot. I'm going to call this 0.5 hours in. And my change in y is 740. And so where did Noah start at 0.5 hours, which when she adds 740 to it, she ends up at 710? Well, that would be negative 30. Okay, so now that we have that filled out, now let's kind of cut everything in half, right? So let's do a change in y over change in x as half of 740 over half of 1. And so 0.5 hours back, she's at 0 hours. And now 370 meters back, right? Where did she start? When she added 370, she ended up at negative 30. Well, that would have to be negative 400, right? Negative 400 plus 730 equals negative 30. And so what I'm encouraging students to do a lot is to be flexible between the verbal representation, which is just the word problem, a table, and an equation. In this case, we didn't use a graph, but other times a graph would be helpful as well. So the equation that I would write here would be y equals 740x minus 400.